Okie dokie, welcome back. Part 4. This time I am going to set a timer and I have my volume on, see? So that it actually tells me when it goes off. So let's do that. Boom. We're rolling. And let's go back to this. Sasha's newsletter. This is the first thing I'm using my brain for today, so hopefully it works. My brain, that is. I do have I did that thing where you make an espresso and you make a cup of coffee and then you pour the espresso into the cup of coffee. It's called, I've seen it on menus before, it's just like a crazy name. I'm going to call it the Dark Night of the Soul. Given what we're reading about, it seems appropriate. So, where did I leave off? Step 1. Let's just start here. Step 1. I made the rejected elements of myself legible. I think that's an important word here. As the first step. Because it's specifically what he's doing with those elements of himself. He's not integrating them yet. Well, I mean, he says shadow integration, but he specifically says he makes them legible. He doesn't make them integrated. And legible means that you can read them, more or less. So I haven't scrolled down. I don't know what the next step is, but I'm going to interpret it that way, that it's just sort of like shadow work allows him to see what those things are when previously he could not. They come out of the shadow. Should I zoom in more? Yeah, that'll help. So shadow work is a mode of approaching the self. 2 precepts. There are parts of you that you shove down and disown. Yep. I like that. Yep. The secret pile of loathing. And then, okay, I don't remember if I got to number 2. A good chunk of the pain in your life. Yeah. Well, see, this paragraph basically says pretty well why I am not a fan of the paradigm of battling your demons, which he mentioned earlier. Right? Battling to me, maybe people mean something other than this by it, but to me, when I hear that, what I think is that this is a good description of that, battling, to engage more fiercely in the conflict, right? Isn't that what battling is? So I don't use that. That's not part of my vocab when I think about this work for myself or even about helping other people with this work. Battling is not something that I do. Battling is, I think, what we tend to do by default before we even, before we begin to do any of this work deliberately. I think that the natural tendency or the default tendency, because I'm not saying it's innate, but it's something that we've been raised to do and given the example of by the people around us our whole lives, is to battle it, push back on it. It's like either you shove it away or you battle it. And I think neither of those things is ultimately productive. Because one, battling requires a hell of a lot of energy, which is what he's saying here. I think, yeah, more or less. The pain and your maladaptive behavior come from your conflict with your shadow, or the things in your shadow, your parts, whatever concept however you want to conceive of those things. Yeah, okay. Connect with and integrate. See, neither of these things happen in a battle. You don't connect with your enemy or integrate them. You just fucking destroy them. Ooh. If you don't do this, you will live in impotent inner struggle. That's pretty poignant. Inner struggle with the additional qualifier of being pretty much just kind of weak and lame. Getting you nowhere. Not really powerful. Yeah. Ouch. I've experienced that for sure. So, I mean, real quick, I think I want to give an example of this. So, on my channel here, I'm also reading the sales page for a program that I'm working through called CU Money, Conscious University Money. And that is all about basically doing this, connecting with and integrating your shadows around money. And the reason why I'm doing that, the reason why I've been doing it for over a year at this point, is because my whole life, and certainly my whole adult life, has been shaped by this sort of impotent inner struggle with money because of my relationship to money, because so much of my attitudes and beliefs about money are these shadowy things, these things that I don't accept. I've just battled with them for years and years and years, and expended so much energy on that, which I could be using in so many other ways. You know, it's like energy that's going inward to, like, in my chest, in my heart, in my brain, to just like fight these inner battles, when it's like, imagine if I didn't have to use my energy that way. And maybe probably that sounds sort of wishy-washy, to be like, oh, I use so much energy fighting inner battles, but like, the image that just occurred to me was, like, imagine a professional chess player. Oh yeah, which Sasha was. I forgot about that until this second. A chess player literally does expend a fucking hell of a lot of energy in their brain, you know? Like, you don't see them doing anything. All they do is move a little piece, like a couple spaces on the board, but they are fucking going through so much energy in a very real way. I don't remember exactly, like, details about this, but I know that I've heard about how, like, chess players, like, actually have to eat a lot. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and that's just a stupid point, but you burn energy. You can burn energy without looking like you're doing anything, is basically the point. It's all happening inside. Okay, so let's move on. Those are the two precepts. Let's keep going. It's interesting why he asks a question. I don't know why, but one thing I've noticed through this piece so far is that Sasha has a lot of really good ways of involving me as the reader, right? Which what I just said was that it was this sort of like instinctual thing that I have where I will say something and then I'll say right, as if to pull in the reader and get them to say like yes or no, or right, and that allows me to also adjust what I'm saying and how I'm explaining something, or to know if I made sense or not. So when we speak, we do that a lot. We have these various ways of involving and staying connected to the people we're talking to. And in writing, it's easy to forget about that, or even feel like you shouldn't, because writing so often feels like it has to be this non-casual, very proper thing, as we learn to do in school. But it doesn't have to be. And here we see Sasha doing that as an example. So that's cool. Okay, I did it through a book called Existential Kink. Just a link to Amazon, which I was exposed to by accident. Interesting. It was given to my wife. My wife basically never recommends books to me. That's not that strange, I guess, if I think about how it's been for me. Sometimes recommending books can be kind of a compulsive thing, you know? It's just like, I want to thrust my worldview and my ideas onto you, so you have to read this book that I'm interested in. And that's certainly an attitude that I've had in the past, that's a thing that I'm doing this work around. It's like, why do I have such an intense compulsion to push my point of view on other people? Like, if they want to know about it, they can ask. If they want to know what I'm reading, they can ask. Anyway. So when she does, I drop everything else immediately. Sounds like they have a very cool relationship. Right? I was at a funny point when I began. Wow. A lot of stuff going. Solid income, marriage, house. House, I mean, just him saying house, I'm guessing he means that he like bought a house already. Dang. Good for you. All that chess money. I don't know. Internally, I had a lot of conflict, but I don't know. Yep. I see this in so many people close to me, especially some of the closest people to me. I see this, and hearing them sometimes brush it aside as like, yep, not worth thinking about. It's sad, but I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm learning to not push on them and let them decide when they want to, and if they want to, change that. Yep, I think that's pretty normal. I didn't understand the possibility of the alternative. Wow, even having done this, he didn't realize. I wonder how common that is. Because the people I'm thinking of, my closest friends and relationships, this is not necessarily the case with them. Some of them, but not the ones I'm thinking of first. I didn't feel like upgrading my mind. I think that, okay, well, it's in italics. I think that is the first time that he has used that phrase or said anything like that, upgrading my mind. That's a very evocative way of illustrating this upgrade. What kinds of things do you upgrade? You upgrade software, right? So it's like putting that metaphor out there without saying exactly what the metaphor is. And obviously, mind as software, human as computer is a fucking gigantic metaphor. Probably one of the most common metaphors in the world of psychology nowadays. Cognitive science, you get all these people specializing in computer science and cognitive science, and so it's like, well, the brain is just another computer. Obviously, I don't have any experience really with computers like that, so I don't have the level of insight there to say yes or no. But being a sort of non-tech oriented person, I don't gravitate to the mind as machine, human as machine way of looking at things. Anyway, moving on. Existential kink. So I have not read this book, but I have seen so many people talk about it. I'm trying to think if I have listened to any talks by the woman who wrote it. Yeah, Carolyn Elliott. I don't think I've listened to any of her stuff, but I think I've read a blog post or two. The only one that comes to mind, though, is like when I went to her website and I went to the very end of her archives and I saw some posts about like when she had just like left her PhD program and was just sort of struggling to get on her feet, making money, and was living on some friend's couch and writing articles all day and coaching people from the couch. That's literally the only article that I can recall, so I don't have much experience with her actual ideas. Tremendously powerful book. I also find it off-putting. Yeah. I think from skimming various things, like even just the Amazon description and things like that, I think I have a similar response. I wonder what these are. What postulates of hers does Sasha disagree with? Yeah, I mean the flip side of this, right, of feeling put off by the attitude or the voice or whatever, is that some people fucking love it. I think. I mean, clearly it's powerful and clearly it's popular, and it was given to him by his wife, who I imagine wouldn't have the exact same response to a book like this, considering that Sasha is a man and at least spent some portion of his life doing chess really seriously, sort of emotional, witchy, funky, feminine, spiritual type of thing is not exactly his thing, but it could be hers. seems a lot more likely to be hers. So yeah, again, all I'm saying is, well, he and I and others find it off-putting, some people freaking love it. And like, I used to go to ecstatic dances, and I loved them, but I also found the environment and the people and the way of talking and relating to each other sort of off-putting in a similar way as he's describing here. So I would imagine that there's some serious similarities. Okay. I like this. The best way to explain it would be to unpack the title. That's a great way to do it. You don't often see that, or I don't often see that, of being like, hey, look, I'm going to explain a book to you, and instead of just like launching into some sort of unstructured, vague attempt to remember what I liked about it and why you might like it, let me just talk about the title and what the hell the title even means. Yeah. So kink, yeah, like BDSM. Think about masochists for a second. Do masochists like pain? Yeah. 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 Relish. That's an important word here. What's another word for relish? Or something close to relish? Savor? Savor is not exactly the same, but it's sort of like right? Just like sitting in it. Like, this is so nice. Or like letting the experience like really soak in some way. Not just eating a piece of chocolate and like chomping it and then swallowing it right away, but letting it melt in your mouth, right? The latter is to relish and savor. The former is to not at all do that. Yep. The endorphins are thrilling. A comforting abandonment. Yep. They treasure certain qualities of being hurt. Just like you, right? Admit it. You love your shitty life, your inner pain. You love little dramas you put yourself through. You love failing in the same ways over and over again. Yeah. I have some other ideas about BDSM, but I won't go into it here. BDSM people like to, well, in my experience, like to shit on each other. No, I'm just kidding. They like to criticize and shit on like vanilla ways of being sexual, which I think is unfair. But I think it does speak to these other ideas that I have about it and what draws people to it or away from it. But yeah, I won't go into that. So yeah, moving on. You love all this stuff. I feel like at this point, this paragraph is not something that I immediately would be like, yeah, I agree. It's more of like kind of a confrontational, like it's a challenge. Like he literally just jumped from explaining BDSM and how people have a way that they can enjoy the pain of being hurt, and then just jumps immediately to saying, well, you're the same way with your little inner dramas. I think he could have written this in a way where he sort of warmed us up to this a little more, so that it wouldn't be surprising to hear. Or he could have said, he could have given himself as an example of like things that he goes through, little inner dramas and conflicts, and the way in which he actually finds certain enjoyment in them, right? He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that with like an example of someone else. So there's no like bridge from this thing about masochists to being like, well, you are also that way. So this just sort of leaves me kind of like, I mean, I don't know, maybe, but I'm not 100% with you yet. It's interesting. It's an interesting idea. And that was my pretend reaction as a reader, but I do agree with him already, just because of my experience with this work. But if I didn't have that experience, I think that's how I would feel. This would be a little bit shocking to read. Okay. This is Carolyn Elliott's Prognosis for a Lot of Humanity. Oh wow, acceptance. That's one of those things, acceptance or letting go or stop doing, just be. It sounds so nice, but if you don't get any help in how the fuck to actually do it, then good luck. Yeah, here. See, I think what I was saying about the way that this earlier paragraph hits me is deliberate on his behalf. Right? He's acknowledging here that it's like, this probably doesn't sit with you quite yet. Right? Or like saying it this. That's kind of, I'm not ready to accept that. If I didn't have the background that I have, I mean. Having is evidence of wanting. Interesting. See, this is I can make sense of this, and I can make sense of it in a way that I agree. But also, there's another idea that I ran into years and years ago, which is, I think, differs from this. Let me see if I can pull it up out of my brain. Which it's more like, if you want it, that means you don't have it. So wanting is actually like a sign that there's distance between you and the thing that you want, right? And so the wanting of it actually, perhaps, in a certain way, creates distance between you and that thing. That's a whole other idea, which I think does have validity to it, and I'm not saying it has to be either or. I don't think in those ways, but yeah. So it also could be a different kind of wanting, right? Like active, conscious, deliberate wanting of a thing that you don't have may be creating or symptomatic of a distance between you and that thing that you want. And so you don't have it in part because of the distance that's created. Okay. So I'll start wrapping this up. Right? Something that often we do when we want things is we sort of put them on a pedestal in some way, or we ascribe all of these, we project onto it. And this is the topic of that other sales page that I'm reading, the See You Money one. That's one of the core premises of that, is that money is this thing that we project all of our desires and shadows onto. And so it becomes this thing that can never fulfill on everything that we project it, or it can never fulfill all the things that we kind of like ascribe it to be, because those things are really just reflections of things that are already in us that we are not owning for ourselves. So yeah, you like put it out in the distance, like, oh, that thing, if I have it, will save me, or that thing is, if it's like a person that you want romantically or sexually, right? And you might be like, man, they're like so amazing, they're so much more attractive than me, and you put them on a pedestal. Well, the nature of being on a pedestal is that there's a distance between you. You are not on the same playing field. You can't readily connect with that person. So the process of taking them off of that pedestal actually makes, in a sort of hard to describe internal, emotional, psychological way, it makes it that they are actually closer to you. But in this case, it's a different idea. Having is evidence of wanting. And so I think this kind of wanting is it's sort of like, well, you have this experience. You have this experience of feeling shitty all the time, or having all these patterns that seem self-destructive or whatever. You have that. It actually is happening. And if you didn't want it, genuinely, if you didn't want it at all, it probably wouldn't be happening. So you probably want it in some way. So the other thing I was talking about is like a explicit conscious desire. This is a totally implicit and unconscious desire that this book, I guess, is sort of illuminating for you, being like, you actually have these desires that you didn't even realize you had. You have engineered your own despair, and you admire the engineering. That's fun. Yeah, that is true. Like, I can attest to that. Like, even at the times when I am really frustrated with my life and how it's going, or if I'm just not fully satisfied and happy with how things are, at the same time I feel a sort of pride at how I have conducted myself through my life, right? Even when I may be lamenting choices that I've made or situations that I've had to go through, even while I'm lamenting that stuff and feeling frustrated about some of those things, like, why did I have to do that? Why did I do that? There's still a way in which I am proud of it. It's still a way in which I elevate myself above other people. Being like, yeah, I made these choices. I did this. I'm better. I'm smart. Okay, so this last thing. Understand that you have engineered your own despair, and then, as if by magic, you will change. So it's 1, understand, and then 2, you will change by magic, right? So he's saying the understanding in and of itself will like trigger the change. You don't have to, well, this is what it seems that he's suggesting before I read on, is that the understanding sparks the change, and you don't have to necessarily put in any further work or energy or effort. You don't have to keep grinding and making it happen. Right? It's like, this is lighting the match, and this is the wildfire that just springs up. But all right, my timer went off, so I'm gonna end it here, and come back next time.